All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Ben Follett. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing here at RISA, and I'll be your presenter for today in this webinar, this new release webinar, talking about RISA 3D, RISAFoundation, and RISAFloor, called Expanding Workflows with RISA. As we dive in, I've got a few slides, and then we will go ahead and jump in to the software live. So first and foremost, just want to lead off with some housekeeping items. If you're struggling with a little bit of the audio, or if you haven't found the Q&A box, if you're new to Zoom webinars, we have two of our technical engineers, Debbie Penko and Rebecca Miller, are both here to answer questions during the presentation. So I don't know that we'll have time for live questions at the end. So if you have a question, drop it in that question and answer thing, and we'll be able to answer those. Also, if you're having issues with audio, try the phone, try the computer. We're also going to record this, so if you're having some concerns with the audio, we can send the recording to everybody here after the presentation is finished. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So to start off, just kind of mentioning the new versions. This release, this core release, like we like to call it, that happened right at the end of February, features new releases of 3D Floor and Foundation, so versions 22, 18, and 16 alike. And so new features across the board. We'll talk specifically about all the products and spend probably, if you haven't already seen the new release email, the most amount of our time in RISAFoundation talking about the new interface. And so high level here, right? If you want to take a screenshot, or if you miss something during the presentation, but new features in RISA 3D that we want to highlight that we're really excited about. So first, a few usability improvements, customizable hot keys, which we'll look at, and then the ability to move nodes with the mouse, tapered member area loads, and support for columns in walls. This is something that is kind of a workflow with RISAFloor, and we'll look at that workflow in just a few minutes. And then some material code updates, support for ACI 318, 1922. I know, a weird name, but that's the way ACI is doing it. And some additional wood stud spacing options. In RISAFloor, two big improvements other than the code updates in ACI that we want to highlight. Again, the support for columns and walls, and then the improved wall panel opening, add and edit tools, which we'll go over live here in just a few minutes. Finally, RISAFoundation. These are just a few of the new features. Obviously, a lot of them fall in line with the updated user interface. So new ribbon interface, improved drawing and selection tools, enhanced detail reports, better visibility in printing and graphics, better visibility in view settings. Obviously, the updated code support. There's too many new things to list. I know if you go through the new features or the release notes, it's 3 or 4 pages long of new things or enhanced things. And so we'll try to touch on what I think are some of the biggest ones that people should take a look at. And we'll try to look at as many of those as possible. So let's, without hesitation here, let's go ahead and jump into our live demo. So I'm going to start in RISAFloor. And again, if you have any questions, can't see the screen, or having issues, just by all means, drop a message in the chat or in the question. And so we're going to start in RISAFloor. So the first thing I want to talk about here in RISAFloor is our ability to, or kind of our enhanced or expanded ability in adding openings. So I have a wood building here. So if I just give you a quick full model view, I've just got a 2-story wood building. But one of the challenges historically in wood buildings was the ability to add openings kind of in an efficient way. Really, it's just a challenge, right? Because you had to add individual openings. And, a lot of times in wood buildings, maybe you're talking about an apartment complex or a hotel, you've got a lot of repeatable opening inputs, right? Every room or every unit has a door, a window in this location, different openings for HVAC and what have you. So now, if we go ahead and insert, or if I go ahead and double click on on one of our wall panels, I'm going to go ahead and delete out my regions, because when a region is created, and this is just standard operating procedure, when a region is already created, you can't do anything from a window or an opening input. And so now you can see this new kind of section on the right-hand side, this expansion of the wall panel editor, basically for opening configurations. So the first here is the ability to create your openings in a spreadsheet, Also, but we still have the ability to create an opening graphically. So let's start with that, right? So if I go ahead and add an opening here, I can just go ahead and pick. The first thing you'll see that's different that I really like, that I think that when you're modeling here, is that you no longer have to only look for, and I know it's disappeared here, but the coordinate system that was kind of down here in this location, but you can see the coordinates kind of jumping here right on the screen. So much easier to kind of input maybe this in this particular case. Maybe I want to drop in a door here, right? Can put in a door here. Maybe I'll also change my grid spacing so it's a little bit easier. But you can see as soon as I put in a door there, I also get this information, just like we do at other times or in other situations, automatically in the spreadsheet here. And so if I want to continue to add in openings graphically, I can, but I can also go ahead and use spreadsheet operations. So I'm just going to hit enter in this particular situation, and let's add in another opening. So if I add in, let's see, an opening here, I can put an opening in here, right? And then, maybe I can make a modification to an opening. So I make a modification to my door opening. I want to change the size. I can do the same thing again, say, okay, I'm going to put in another new opening. Let's make this, I don't know, 16, 4, 4, and 4. So maybe those openings, again, are too close. So I can start to manipulate the opening here to kind of start to drop in this different information, right? And so as I do that, I can also utilize some of the same spreadsheet features, same spreadsheet features that allow us to, or that we have in our regular spreadsheets. So if I wanted to go ahead and say, I put everything in wrong, or maybe the architect comes back and wants us to shift everything, I could go ahead and say, well, I want to shift this X direction. So I'm going to right click and say math on block, and I can go ahead and add in a 2 feet, right? Shift everything 2 feet over, right? So I can easily update and change that as well. The other thing I want to point towards is some of the management of warnings. So if I were to go ahead and add in, let's say, a 4th opening in this situation. So let's say I'm going to put it in at 16, 4, 4, and 4. So you can see right away that obviously I'm getting an overlap here. This is pretty obvious in this particular situation, but I'm also getting the red text highlighted here, kind of signifying that in those 2 situations for opening 3 and opening 4, that I have an overlap. I have an issue that is going to prohibit me from creating regions and for ultimately running the design. If I shift this as well, so maybe instead of shifting it right or left, maybe I can go, actually, let's go a little bit wider. Let's go like 30 feet, right? So I shift it out here. And now if I go to, let's just delete this guy out here, delete mark lines. If I shift this up and I go up to, let's say, 8 feet, you can also see that now this opening intersects with the diaphragm. So I get the same warning in this particular situation because I have the same issue. I can't have an opening that's intersecting or crossing over a diaphragm as well. So the same thing kind of takes into account here. Now, all of this stuff, this is great. It's great to have this, but I also have the ability to utilize openings, right? Or excuse me, utilize templates for these openings. So I could save what I have here as a template. So let's say I don't want this obviously to fail, right? So let's say this can be 4 feet and everything else is fine from right now. So if I want to go ahead and say if I want to save this to the template library, I'm going to go ahead and grab these, copy it. So I'm just going to grab everything, Control C. I'm going to open up the template library and I'm going to add a new one. Let's call this like, webinar template or something like that. Click OK. And I'll go ahead and paste in those openings. So now I have those openings saved as the template that I can then reuse, right? So I could reuse that on different walls. I also, if I've wanted to make a change, or if I wanted to shift things around, I could go ahead and say, I want to default back to my no openings, which is essentially nothing, right? It's basically clearing out everything that I've added to that particular wall. I can also access the template library here, up here in the top dialog. So I can see, again, those libraries and the templates that I've created here. And so now if I go ahead and, I could go ahead and apply a template to a specific opening. So let's say I want to, maybe you want to look at like this WP33 and WP36. They're the same wall. And so in this case, I'm going to go ahead and, instead of opening up one and applying an opening like I have already there, I can actually go ahead and say, well, instead of doing that, maybe I'll, let's maybe use this guy over here. I can go ahead and select my drawing tools and my wall tool. And instead of drawing, I'm going to modify that wall. And inside the modify option, I can say I want to use an opening template here. So I'm going to use an opening template, and I created a new opening template. It's called Doored in 3 Windows. And I can go say, I want to apply that by clicking on the individual walls. I'll click apply, and I'll say this one. I already have an all opening there. Oops, it's my fault. And we can use this one. Okay. Oh yeah, because it extends beyond. Okay. So I can go ahead and apply those. And then, we have these now wall openings that are just applying. And so again, very quickly, very easily, we can go ahead and apply the wall opening kind of editor or that wall opening template to various wall openings. Now, again, I can shift or I can manipulate these templates at any time by just accessing our template library, modifying these additional ones, deleting ones, set them up per project, obviously, in this particular case, and then add them to the different runs of walls that I need to. So really quickly and easily being able to establish an opening template that you can use repeatedly over and over and over again in your particular model. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about in this particular model is adding support for columns and walls. So prior to this version, if I were to go ahead and just add in a column here, we'd get an error in RISAFloor because it wouldn't really understand or know what to do with that particular column. And so now in this case, I'm going to go ahead and I want to add in a wood column in the middle of this particular wall. So this WP 46. So at this kind of E7 location. So I'm going to go ahead and columns here. So I want to draw a column. I want to draw a wood column, just make it a rectangular column. It can be a lateral column. That's great. So everything else is the same in this particular sense. And so I can click apply, and I'm going to go ahead and apply that column there. And so with the column applied there, I can also go ahead, let's look at the roof here. And so let's apply it at that level too. So let's apply it at the roof level. Okay. So now if I go ahead really quickly and look at the full model, right, I should see this column stack essentially that I've applied here. If I go back to the floor, I'm going to open up my columns here, and I'm just going to look at, okay, I've got that column added. I've got that splice location. That's perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on that same splice for this particular case at the roof here. So basically just we're breaking this column at the 12-foot locations. That's the height of each floor. So now if I go run a quick solution here, I don't have too many loads in this, but just for the means of this particular presentation. Now if I go ahead and open up in RISAFloor the column forces spreadsheet, we can see that we now actually get a base reaction at that column. Previously, we wouldn't have gotten that base reaction for that axial load at that particular column. That would have been broken out and kind of smoothed out through that wall. Now, the big advantage in kind of looking at this information is how this kind of interacts with RISA 3D now. So I'm going to go ahead and use the director then to shift to RISA 3D. So yeah, we'll save the model, no problem. Wind code is fine, seismic code is fine, so no issues there. And so the model will transfer over. So the RISA 3D will launch here. So let's see, do we open yet in the background yet? Should be launching here in just a second. And while we wait, that's going to launch open. And there it is, RISA 3D was in the background. Apologize for that. And so now we're back into RISA 3D with that same model, obviously bringing in the lateral elements, and in this case, bringing in those columns. And so I've gotten in these locations, I've got 2 columns. So this set I had already applied previously, and this set that I just created here. Now, the first thing I want to do before running any of my any of my model information, I'm going to go ahead and select. Let's go ahead and select this column run here. So I've got 5 selected elements, 2 nodes here. One of the things I want to look at is this additional property here called column wall vertical release. And I'm actually going to turn this on for this particular element. So essentially, when enabled, this column wall kind of vertical release function will actually decouple in the vertical direction that column from the wall during the analysis. Therefore, no axial load transfer will happen between the column and the wall panel. And so we can actually see this when we go ahead and run the analysis. Now, other connectivity for, say, in plane or out of plane, remains intact. And this is only a feature, right, that's available for columns that are transferred from a RISAFloor model into a RISA 3D model. So with this, I can also go ahead really quickly. Let's just turn on the loads, obviously, so I can see my point loads that are coming in from, remember we had kind of that girder here, if you will, with the elements framing this direction in this Z direction, with the girder framing into the wall at these locations at these columns. So we've got those concentrated point loads in the dead. We've got some in the live, and then obviously we've got some, oops, not special live load, roof live load as well. And so now if I go ahead and very quickly run my solution, just run a quick solution here, we'll go ahead and see the results at these two locations. And I want to compare those results so we can see the resultant of that selection for that kind of decoupling of the column and the wall. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the loads off in this particular situation. And let's go ahead and look at reactions in the Y direction. So we look at reactions in the Y direction, and I'm just looking at it per a single load case combination at this particular case. So IBC 16.8, right, should be, I think, in this case, dead load, right? So let's go ahead and look at like dead plus live here. So you can see here, the total reaction, right, 15.9 kips, over here 12.7 kips, same exact loading on these conditions. So we've got the same exact loading and everything. There's no difference here other than the fact that we added that checkbox for decoupling, basically, or removing the connection from an axial load perspective for the column to the wall. And so you can see how that impacts this. So basically you're getting pure axial load taken by that particular column. We can also go ahead and look at that, right? If we look at the axial load here, as it kind of goes down the model here, we can see that axial load kind of in a perfect distribution, as if the load is all exclusively applied to that column here, as opposed to, kind of getting dragged a little bit in and out of that wall and column based on the interaction of the stiffness that you have at that particular location. So we can see kind of the difference that's going on there. Now, while we're in 3D, I'm going to jump to another model. So I'm going to jump to this. We're not going to save this in this particular situation, but I want to jump to this hanger model. So just a steel model in this case. So I don't want to save any of these elements. And so I've got this kind of big hanger model that I'm going to use. Let's turn off some of the nodes so that we can see what we're doing here. So I'm going to use this to talk about some of the other new features here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take a selection so that we're only looking at kind of the front part of this. The front part of this. I don't call this like, box truss that's in the front of this element. And so to do that, I'm going to go ahead and use our dim lock feature. So just get our dim lock feature so I can kind of see and reference behind what I'm looking at, but also only focus on those front elements. So one of the new features, super excited about this one, obviously, is the ability to add in a area load or a tapered area load. So I'm gonna choose our member area loads here and set my direction here. Let's say I'm gonna call it drift snow is what we're gonna focus on in this particular situation. And I'm going to call this not a uniform load, but a tapered load, right? And so now I can set the load direction. So I'm going to set the load direction to be a kind of a one-way distribution in this particular case, but I can also set 4 different magnitudes, right? Now you obviously have to be careful when you have the ability to set 4 different magnitudes, because you have the ability to basically create this kind of crossing of things. If you go too negative, too positive in one of the directions, you're not going to get a perfect kind of distribution. But in this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and set my A and B magnitudes to -50 PSF. Let's set C as 0 and D is -20 PSF. And then I can go ahead and start to model. So I'm going to model this from that location all the way over to, let's see, this here. And let's go ahead and grab this guy here. Okay, so now I've got that tapered area load applied right to this entire, and we can see obviously with this distribution here, how this is drawn here, we can see that in that way. I can also, the next thing I want to do, obviously, let's just go ahead and solve. If I look at my load combinations here, I'm just going to solve this current load combination, that snow load combination. Oh, and so I actually broke it myself. I created a non-coplanar resultant here. So I got that error that I kind of expected that I would get. So in that situation, I can go ahead and fix my issue, fix my error. resolve my model here. And then we should be able to see the distribution. So what I show is I want to show the breakdown, right? The transient loads that are created based on the input I just created here. So that's our load distribution. Now I should have transient loads, and I do. And this is very clear now, right? This is kind of what we expect now to see, is that we've got this linearly decreasing distribution of line load on those members. I excluded the braces, so it's not going to these braces that are in the same plane, but I have them directly to those elements. And so exactly what I wanted, exactly what I would expect to do with that particular tapered member area load. Now, the next thing I want to do in this case is talk a little bit about our ability to move nodes with our mouse. So historically, and let's go ahead and turn the rest of the model back on. Historically, right, if you wanted to shift a node, you're selecting that node and then you're manipulating the X coordinate, the Y coordinate. The trouble with that always is that when you have, when you don't have perfectly round numbers, you don't have perfect, increments, it may be difficult to find, exactly what you're looking for. And so in this particular situation, we have the ability to now just kind of shift some things around. So, maybe I want to shift the kind of chords or the webs members of this truss to match up with that particular situation on the core. So I can just kind of grab the node. I'm just, again, highlighting the node, shifting the node over, right? I don't have to shift it node to node. I can also say, hey, I want to grab one here and go up here. Again, pretty simple, pretty standard, but I can start shifting things around. I also don't have to shift to an actual existing node, right? So if I grab the node here, I can have my increments on, right? So like I have some different, half point, quarter point, third point increments on. So if I wanted to shift to any of those snap points as well, I could just grab and shift to those snap points as well. So really easy, obviously not, the not the craziest feature, but also something I think that's super useful when you're manipulating geometry and having the ability to shift the nodes around really at your leisure. One of the things I do like is this little button up here is the ability to lock out the ability to move nodes by your cursor. So I know somebody says, well, what if I do this on accident? What if I screw this up? I'm going to screw up my whole model. So if you're to the point where you're saying, hey, I don't want to be able to do this. I want to be able to lock this out for this particular model because I'm just nervous about doing something. You can do that. Just click that lock button and you won't run into any issues. You won't be able to use that feature. Now, the last thing I want to highlight in RISA 3D is we've always had, or for at least a while, have had the ability to do keyboard shortcuts. So we've had some defined keyboard shortcuts. Those obviously coincide with the customization of like your bin library and the ability to put different buttons and tools there. We also now have added in the application settings the ability to kind of review and modify a bunch of the different keyboard shortcuts. So here, if I go to application settings and then into keyboard over here, I can go ahead and look at, evaluate, set, change, do whatever I want to do with a lot of the keyboard shortcuts. So for instance, if I want to like look at what the keyboard shortcut is for mirror, we actually don't have a current keyboard shortcut for mirror. And so I can go ahead and set that. Maybe that's going to be Shift M in this particular case, right? So I can set the keyboard shortcut as I see. If I wanted to delete that, I can. Now, if I wanted to try to apply that as something that already existed, right? If I go ahead, I just clicked M, right? Okay, I can't use the shortcut for M because it's already used for members. That actually makes more sense. Please enter a new shortcut combination. Okay, I'm going to stick with Shift and M. Okay, that's going to be my shortcut. I can go ahead and apply that. Now, I can also go ahead and review and change others. So again, if I want to search like materials, I can see that here's the different material, kind of unsolved model and then the takeoff. I could go ahead and shift this to something else. Maybe I want this to be a one button click. So I'm just going to make this, Y, right? Y is unused. I can go ahead and set that as materials as well. So we can do a bunch of different things and we can manipulate these as we see fit. We can also just go ahead and review the entirety of them. So if I look on the home key, here we can see the ones that are unassigned. Here are the ones that are assigned. So members, plates, walls, boundary conditions, right? And you can change these as you see fit. Maybe there's a way that you're using keyboard shortcuts for AutoCAD. I know that that's somewhere where people are using a lot of keyboard shortcuts, and then they want to match those keyboard shortcuts to the best of their ability with RISA 3D. You can do that so that you're kind of really, really creating some efficiency in your CAD workflows. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about some of the features in RISA 3D. We've talked a little bit about some of the features in RISAFloor, but let's go ahead now and jump into, I don't want to save this model. I'm going to go ahead and jump directly into RISAFoundation now. So let's go ahead and launch RISAFoundation. So if you haven't already seen it, this is, I mean, what everybody's really excited about. RISAFoundation obviously widely used as it is, but we're very, very excited about the new UI in RISAFoundation. And really the biggest thing for me is it's not just a new coat of paint on, what was previously RISAFoundation. With that new coat of paint, obviously, in my opinion, and I think in many opinions, this looks better, right, than what RISAFoundation used to look like, right? It's more modern, it's more updated, it's more kind of in line with other ribbon-based programs, which we're all familiar with. The Microsoft Office suite of programs, Autodesk programs, a lot are ribbon-based now. So very user-friendly, very familiar in that case. But from a familiarity standpoint, the first thing that people will notice is the familiarity with, if you're using 3D, which a lot of our customers are, and frankly, most of our customers are, you're going to have a really easy transition into now using RISAFoundation, right? Things are located in similar spots. So for instance, you have your main drawing tool, you have your Explorer, which again, you had before, but you also have your properties palette. So again, any selection that I make, so, if I go ahead and select this slab, I can modify and manipulate the properties of that slab or the properties of my wall footing or the properties of my spread footing, whatever, in my properties palette. So same kind of functionality there. I also, as far as the ribbon is concerned, see this same kind of setup of buttons. So if I'm drawing elements, if I'm drawing, kind of just standard foundation elements, I've got a whole section for drawing slab elements. If I'm drawing loads or applying load combinations, or if I'm looking at quick view here in this particular case, hey, I want to turn on and off my nodes, right? I want to turn on and off my rendering, right? I want to reset my view, right? All of these things, I want to measure. All of these things now are available to you as the end user, again, in the exact same way, for the most part, that they are available to you in RISA 3D. Obviously, there's some differences, right? Some of the main differences are just solely based on the fact that RISA 3D allows you to move completely around and through a 3D model. RISAFoundation is obviously a little bit more limited in the sense that you're sitting kind of in a plan view for the most part, looking down on this. Obviously, we can look at an ISO view, but most of the same functionality exists. Again, one of my favorite features of both programs, and one of the biggest, I think, kind of time savers, is just the ability to, easily enable and see, features and make those selections and changes. So one of the things now, right, is that you have the ability to turn on your loads. So if I want to display loads and I want to show me my dead loads, show me my live loads, shifting back and forth, right? The same thing will be true when we go ahead and look at results, right? Just really quickly and easily showing and shifting back and forth between the different loads, the different load combinations, the different results is super, super easy. You also have the ability to, in the same way that you do in RISA 3D, right, add different bins or customizable buttons, customizable toolbars to your interface. So you want to change the ones that we have, you want to remove some of the ones that we have, you want to add different ones because you want to have, the buttons up in a certain way, or maybe you like some of the button layouts that you had in previous versions of RISAFoundation. That's completely up to you. You can go ahead and set that up in any way you like. You also, when you start to select items, see that things start to shift to based on where the software expects the next action to be, right? So if I select a slab, right, I'm getting the modified tools. So the ability to copy, to mirror, to rotate, to move, to modify all the slab elements, right? To modify the design strips, which is something that you really couldn't do before. This is brand new functionality, to relabel, right? If I access any of these items, we get these modified tools, right? If I shift to viewing tools, we get the viewing tools. If I start to draw something new, so like in this particular case, maybe I want to start to draw in a spread footing. So I'm going to go ahead and click on spread footing here. So the first thing I get right is the definition of the spread footing. Well, for this particular case, the definition of the spread footing is part of a design rule, right? So I'm going to go ahead and launch open that spread footing design rule. So I'll view and edit the existing rule. And so I just wanted to kind of show the updated dialogues here. So we could go ahead and shift around or manipulate the geometry, the pedestal, the soil characteristics of this particular thing. We could relabel it. We could do really whatever we want in this case, or we can just start to apply. So again, I could either click on nodes, or maybe I'm just going to do a multi-select or a kind of a box select, very similar to what we have in RISA 3D, what you have in CAD functions, and go ahead and apply those spread footings. Now, one of the things I really like about RISAFoundation, and this is something that exists in RISA 3D as well, is the kind of enhanced functionality with this select elements by property. So really utilizing anything that you want, really, to the nth degree almost, to kind of cater a selection based on what you're trying to do. So in this particular case, right, I can select by nodes or beams or slabs or footings or walls or piles or strips or whatever. I'm actually going to go ahead and select based on coordinate criteria. So I'm going to say, hey, there's a segment or a section of this model where I want to be able to select the nodes so I can add loads to them. So in this particular case, I'm going to say it's the Z coordinates. So it's kind of the left and right coordinates here. So the Z coordinates, I want to select nodes from Z coordinates 78 to, let's see, 128. And I want to select, in addition, I only want to select places where there are not piles. I don't want to do piles, where there are pedestals. So basically locking my selection to maybe this slab. And so in this case, if I go ahead and click select, I now get from 78 is kind of between 5 and 6 here, and 128 is at line 8. So now I get those 12 pedestals in the slab selected, right? Now, I could have easily grabbed, those with a multi-select, but in some cases where, the multi-select would have grabbed the nodes, the pedestals, it would have grabbed any loads that I could have potentially selected there. So again, if you want to refine your selections, you can do this through this select elements by property. Coordinates is just one of the fun ones I really like to utilize. And so now with those selected, maybe I want to go ahead and add in some additional nodal dead loads, right? So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to go to nodal load, dead load in the direction that I want. Let's go ahead and apply, 25 kips, and we'll apply to selected, right? So just really quickly be able to apply those selected loads there at those locations. Now, if I wanted to change some of them, maybe I wanted to grab all the selected elements here. Again, when I grab that location there, I get not just the loads that I see, I get the pedestals, I get other things. And so I could say, okay, well, I want to change my nodes, and I want to change my magnitude here. So let's make the magnitudes on these ones, I don't know, 15 kips or something like that, right? So I can shift around what I'm looking at from a dead load perspective. I can change those things. Again, if I wanted to manipulate then, again, if I wanted to go ahead and delete my nodes here, I could go ahead and say I want to do a multi-select delete of only my, displayed loads, apply to selected, right? And so I could just shifting what I want to change, shifting what I want to delete, manipulating my model much more freely with this kind of interface. Now, the next thing I want to do is looking at some of the modification tools that I think really allow RISAFoundation to sing. And so the first one here is that you'll notice I don't have any pedestals. I don't have any pedestals up here. Let's go ahead. I got some extra loads here, which is okay, but let's go ahead and delete these suckers because I was selected on my slab when I went and added those loads the next time. So let's go ahead to nodal loads, delete multi-select, apply selected. Okay. So now what I want to do is I actually want to shift the slab here. So I don't need the slab all the way up to A1 here. I actually want it to come down to a different dimension somewhere kind of in this grouping here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my drawing tools and I'm going to turn on my display grid. So here's my display grid. I'm going to go manipulate my display grid. So I want to manipulate this to say, let's go up to 50 by 2s, and we can say 30 by 2s here. So I've kind of just got this different grid, but I want to localize a point in the middle here for the corner of my slab. So if I go to modify, right, we have all our slab modification tools now. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to redraw. I want to redraw the edges of a slab. I don't want to delete the whole slab out, because then if I delete the slab, I'm going to lose a bunch of the stuff that it's associated with. So in this case, I'm going to redraw the slab. Now, I want to start by clicking on the end of the edge nearest where I want to start manipulating that node. So I'm going to click on this edge up here. And now I can see I'm kind of dragging, or kind of locked, if you will, to that particular node. And so I'm going to go ahead and say the slab's going to be, here's the corner. I want to connect it back to the edge, the flat edge on this side, and I'm going to end it down here at the bottom. So now I've got that first edge kind of redrawn. Now I need to do the same thing with this upper edge. So I'm still in my redraw slab edges tool. I'm going to start by clicking again to the right side here to this node, because this is where I want to start. So I'm starting here, and I'm going to go ahead and grab the node. Maybe I want to come down here, or actually, you know what? Maybe I need to shift my drawing tools so I have a crossing kind of grid there. So now I have that grid location. I can go here and here, right? So now I just shifted my slab edge so that it's no longer, at that top corner. I'll turn on the rendering here. No longer at that top corner, but at the location that I want. We can do the same exact thing, right, with our design strip. So again, I have a redraw edges for design strip. So do the same thing here, redraw the edges back to this location, right? There's our first one. Let's turn off this pink because it's pretty violent. And let's go ahead and do that last one more time, redraw edges, select here, and we'll get back to our edge here. Oops, click the wrong one there. Redraw edges for design strip. It's right here. There we are. Okay, so now our design strips, right, are in the right location. So I've got this design strip that follows the edge of my slab now. So I can really easily manipulate the model that I'm looking at, make those changes kind of really freely based on the fact that we've got this new, more robust interface available to us. Okay, so now if again, if we wanted to continue to make changes, we continue to grab, different elements just by selecting those elements and make changes. But in this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and solve my model really quickly. So just running through our batch solution, just like always, Foundation's always had the batch solution here. So we're running that batch solution. And we're going to go ahead and start to look at results. So the first thing I want to look at, let's go ahead graphically and look at some bearing pressure. So let's look at some soil pressure results. Right? And I can look at an envelope soil pressure, or I can look at an individual load combination, right? So let's go down to some of our IBC combinations here for soil pressure. So I've got this soil pressure, right? Now, maybe in this particular situation, I want to take a screenshot of this model, right? I want to include this in my calc package. So the first thing I'm going to do is I can go up to our little camera button here. So the little camera. Again, if you're familiar with RISA 3D, this is the same exact workflow. That's, for me, the greatest thing about this is that if you know RISA 3D, which many of you do, you now know exactly how to use RISAFoundation for the most part. So now, again, I can go ahead and manipulate this screenshot. So if I wanted to zoom in here, if I wanted to change some of the text scaling, if I wanted to change the scaling, that's too big of those elements, I could do that. My nav panel, okay, let's just keep everything where it is. I can set that. And then I can go ahead and save this as a file. So I can say, soil pressure 1 or something like that, right? And I'll go ahead and save that snapshot, right? So that snapshot is now available. One of the things I didn't mention within that, right, is that because I have full accessibility here, and this is kind of just a live look at the model, I can turn on and off different things. If I grabbed soil pressure and I was like, actually, I wanted displacement, or actually I wanted my QZ or something like that, right? I can make that change directly in here. I don't have to print a picture, go back, print another picture, go back, make another change, go back, delete a picture to make another picture. None of that. We don't have to do any of that. Okay, so now maybe I also want to look at some of my design forces, right? So I can go ahead and turn off my kind of forces in my slab, but I want to turn on some strip forces, right? So now I've got some strip forces that I'm looking at, out of plane moment, out of plane shear forces in the slab based on those design strips that I applied to my slab here. right? I can go ahead and look at them in the envelope, right? This is an envelope because it's going through all the cuts for me. And then I can also go ahead and look at this in a detailed report, right? So I can see the basics here, but I can also click on the left-hand side here, or if I go to my results, click on a detail report, and I can select, let's select this guy here, select the detailed report for this particular strip, right? So I see the strip. These are now graphical, or not graphical, sorry, dynamic. And so if I go ahead and click on any of these, I can see my forces, in this particular, at these particular locations based on what I'm looking at. Again, RISA 3D tools through and through. We could go ahead and click on any of our cuts. That's going to show us our cuts. So, showing us our minimum flexible reinforcement for that particular cut. This is our worst case cut. If I go back to my strip here, right? Our worst case cut for top reinforcement and for bottom reinforcement. So giving me those locations there. So again, I can add this information. I can also go ahead if I say, you know what, this is exactly what I want to include in my report. I can click on that button to add this to my full report, right? And now that will show up as a detailed report in my full report already there without me having to go ahead and grab it separately. So if I close this out now, I can go ahead and continue to look at some of the other reporting options that are available to me, right? If I want to continue to look at detailed reports, maybe we want to look at, I don't know, one of these footing detailed reports, right? Again, similar as far as what you're looking at, but expandable detailed reports similar to what we're seeing in RISA 3D, but with the load combinations, all the values for those particular elements for that particular check, right? So you can see all of that information and what's going into that calculation. You can see your drawings. Again, you can look at these and modify or evaluate these as you need to include them in your detailed report. Now, again, if I wanted to add that to a full report, I could add that to a full report. If I wanted to check some of the options, again, I don't want to see all of this information. It's too much. It's drinking from the fire hose, right? I want to see some more of the basic information, or I want to apply a summary. Okay, I want to apply the summary. There's the summary, and I want to add that to my report, right? I can do that as well. Now, the last thing I want to do is, go ahead and look at some of my options or opportunities once I've created the report. Now I need to, or created the individual detailed reports, I need to go ahead and build my full report. So I'm going to go ahead up in the top here and choose print report, right? And now we're brought into our new report printer. So the first thing you'll see here in this particular situation, obviously, is that we have that design strip and that spread footing reports that I selected to be added to the full report already available to me. And then, again, this is, again, I keep on harping on this, but it's the same workflow as RISA 3D, which is really great because if you know one, you know the other. We're trying to create efficiencies, right? If we can save you an hour of time, which maybe cost your firm a couple $100s, we're now actually starting to save billable hours on the project for you because knowing one means you know both, right? And that's really the great advantage here. And so if I wanted to go ahead and add in, I don't know, let's say I wanted to add in my soil regions, right? And I can reposition those, based on what I want. I want to add in, our loads, so our nodal loads and our area loads, right? Again, I can reposition those based on what I'm applying here. We can add in, all the different information, maybe the design rules of a footing. I don't know, I'm just picking those different things that we're applying to this particular model. So we can add in all of the different elements here to our detail report, similar to, again, what we've done in RISA 3D. Again, you also have the same option to create a report template, right? So if I have a standard foundation report template for my office, maybe I know, like in my past life as a consulting engineer, I had a standard report template for the way that we submitted a report to a metal building designer, right? Because they wanted to see our report to go into their package the same way because we were designing the foundations, right? So I've got that saved report, blue scope metal building report done, right? That report template shows me exactly what I want to see. The other thing about this is that we can customize any of these, right? So like if I was looking at, my nodal loads, right? This is all of them, but again, maybe I don't want to see all of my nodal loads. Maybe I just want to see my dead loads, right, included here. So I can filter out and show only my dead loads, right? I can do the same thing with my area loads. I can do the same thing with my reports. All those different things can be kind of manipulated and modified so that it fits exactly what you're looking for. Again, similar, you have the detailed reports. So again, you can show all detailed reports. So here's all the cuts and everything. That's maybe again too much, but maybe we want to choose a pedestal or post, right? So let's go ahead and add in one of those, right? And so if we go ahead to the end here, we can see the pedestal or post report for this particular one. So this is in the 24-inch section of that. We can see all the checks that are going into this particular part of the report. We could also go to the advanced tab here, and because we saved an image, and by default, all those images are saved in the image folder, and that folder is located in the same exact location as the model file, those will automatically be found, and we can go ahead and add in that image as well. So, right, we've got that image to include as well. So we can customize and create the report exactly how we like it, exactly what we need to create and do in order to deliver the calc packages that we need to for whatever it is that we're working on. Okay, so if I jump out of the report here, a few other things, and again, like I mentioned, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of new tools that we're really excited about, but I wanted to highlight a few that I particularly like in doing things. So we mentioned customizing the toolbar. One of the things I wanted to mention was filtering. So, again, when we when I use that select elements by property, so again, let's go ahead and use that again. So we're selecting the pedestals, right? So that should select those 12 pedestals there. If I wanted then to do a filter, I could do a filter input to say, when I look at the spreadsheets, I only want to see the information for those 12. Again, this is a similar functionality to RISA 3D, but I think very powerful even in RISAFoundation here. So I want to filter out the unselected items. Yes, I do. And then if I go ahead and open up my pedestals and posts, I only see 12 of those now, right? So I can go ahead and make mass manipulations. So again, if I want these to all be a different height, right, I can just go ahead and say fill cells. Those need to be 16 inches tall now. Yes, I know I'm going to lose my results. But again, just really quickly and easily making those changes. Again, making changes graphically, doing, just the ability to graphical select, right? In the same way that we just did those selections, gives you kind of the same functionality, gives you the same ability to select and manipulate and modify those elements as well. Let's see, what else did I wanted to mention? So again, in the modify tools, one of the biggest things, I think one of the biggest questions that we get a lot of times is just the modification in slabs. And so again, the ability to offset a design strip, right? So you want to expand the outer ends of a design strip, the ability to offset your slab. I know I use that all the time especially when I've got models that are coming in from RISA 3D, all of these tools available to you in the modify tools as well. View tools, we can do some, results animation. So if you've got a deflection plot, you want to animate that plot, you can do that as well. The drawing tools, again, with all your snap settings, again, same snap settings as RISA 3D. So quarter points, third points, you want to turn on universal snap settings so you can snap to a universal 1x1 grid. You can do that. Bringing in a DXF underlay, you can bring that information in again. So again, all the same features, functionalities of RISA 3D that I think people have come to really like and really, talk about as far as increased efficiency available to you from that perspective in RISAFoundation as well. Now, again, like I mentioned, as we kind of steam ahead towards the end of our presentation here, I implore you to go look at the new results page, the new features page, go look at the release notes, because you'll see every little bit of functionality that's been added that is going to increase your efficiency, and it's going to kind of give you a level up or a step up when using RISAFoundation. But let's go ahead and jump back into our PowerPoint here. I want to talk about a few other items. The first one I wanted to include here is just, and I don't have a picture, I forgot to include my picture here, so I apologize for that, but coming soon. So we're always looking to add new features to the software, but the first one is anchorage design in RISA Connection, slated for release here in a little while. So basically replacing not replacing, we'll still have our connection with Hilti Profis, but including the ability to do anchorage design. It used to be Appendix D. I think it's no longer Appendix D, but basically anchorage design according to ACI for post-installed anchors. So the ability to do all those tear out and blowout checks and everything, you'll be able to see that information in your 2D and 3D views. You'll also be able to see all the detail of the checks. So there'll be a new tab both on the input side and on the output side for anchorage design, where you can see exactly what you're doing for those anchor bolt checks. And so those will come with those base plate design assemblies or base plate design connections that you have in a RISA connection. So if you're a RISA connection user, or if you're not a RISA connection user and you've been using something else, but you'd like to use RISA connection because it integrates fully with RISAFloor and RISA 3D, it's a great time to go ahead and take a look at that when that comes out. And so we'll be sending out information about that release upcoming. The other thing, and obviously I just scratched the surface of everything that RISAFoundation can do. And we recognize that it's a change similar to what we did with from 3D to version 17 to version 18 when we changed the interface of RISA 3D. But so we wanted to offer a training course. And so these training courses have been successful for RISA 3D. We've had almost 1,000 users take our RISA 3D training course over the last 2 years. We started our RISAFloor training course at the end of last year, but we're also now launching our RISAFoundation Quick Start course. So our first course, which I haven't even talked about yet, and we're already getting people that are just kind of finding it organically and registering. So our first course will be later this month, starting Tuesday, the 26th and running till Thursday, the 28th. So this is, if you haven't participated in one of these courses before, they're two-hour teaching sessions, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday. On Wednesday, we have what we call an office hour session, basically just the ability for you to come and meet Rebecca and ask her any questions about RISAFoundation, about the homework, about the interface, just the ability to kind of make sure you get your questions answered for the training that you're participating in. You get PDH credits. You'll get all the recordings for the course. Those are yours on YouTube to keep. And so if you visit risa.com/training, or I've actually put the direct link in the webinar chat. I think that's the easiest way. You can click on that, jump right in there, and start grabbing tickets as you will. The last thing I wanted to mention before we go ahead and kind of shut it down is just, if you need help, right? If you've got questions, if you're looking to learn more about obviously anything new that you saw, if you maybe are here and you've never used RISA 3D, or you've never used RISAFloor, or you've never used RISAFoundation, check out the new features, risa.com/new features. I implore you to reach out to support, right? If you run into something, or, maybe, I know obviously tried to cover a lot of ground today, and you may not have, caught something that I said. Reach out to support, at support@risa.com, or you can call them, Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific, to get your questions answered. The other is one of the things that we offer, and this is if you search RISA Software Tour or go.risa.com/software tour. This is basically just a meeting with one of our technical engineers. This is primarily for new users or users that are looking to buy new products. Hey, you want to get a jump start before your trial period, for instance, on the product. You want one of our engineers to show you around, kind of like I did with RISAFoundation, but an hour where you can ask questions specifically, and we can kind of go off script a little bit and do exactly what you want to do. You can go ahead and schedule a software tour. Those are free. You can grab those up and fill up Nate and Alan's calendar, and they're willing to meet with you and walk you through any new product that you're looking at to make sure that you're making the right decision for yourself. The last thing not mentioned on here, but obviously RISAFoundation now out in the wild. If you maybe used it in the past, or you don't own it anymore, or maybe you owned it last year, but you want to give the new interface a try, you can go ahead and request a free 10-day trial as well. So full feature trial available to you. Can let the trial period speak for itself. Let that be the time when you ask questions. Maybe that's the time when you get a software tour, so that you can get all those questions answered. So you can make sure that, hey, yeah, I didn't like the old interface for whatever reason. I love the new interface. It's much more efficient. I'm ready to, use this as part of my foundation design package or a replacement to something else. We thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. And we hope you have great success with the new versions of RISA 3D, RISAFloor, and RISAFoundation.